I'm with Avos Hashem, that to serve Hashem out of love, one who serves Hashem out of love, meaning you're walking the path of truth for the sake of truth, without any ulterior motive. That's out of love. Malazu Mala Gedola Ma'od. This level of distinction, to be able to achieve this, is something exceptional. Then called Chochem Zochalo. Not even a person who's classified as a Chochem, does he merit this level of distinction, this level of service? The Malos Avram Avinu. And this was the special level of distinction of Avram Avinu, Shekora Kodesh Baruch Hu Ovo. Hashem quantified and classified Avram as Ovo, the one who loved him, Ovo. Lefishlo Ovad Elemi Avo. Avram's impetus and attraction to God was purely out of love. And this level of distinction, every Jew has this obligation to try to achieve this. Shenemar, you must love Hashem. There's a mitzvah say, a positive commandment to love Hashem. If a person loves Hashem, the appropriate level of avo, love, as a result of what is the emanates from that? Every mitzvah he does is out of avo. Give you an example, and we speak about ava she'eino tluya b'davar, love which is not contingent on anything. You love your wife not because she provides for you, not as a provider, because she is that special person. So now, whatever you do for your wife going forward is because of that love that you appreciate and understand who she is. So whatever you do is out of love. It's not every time you have to make a decision because she provides this for me, therefore it's a tit for tat. There's no tit for tat. Why do I have a relationship with her? Because she's not because she provides for me, rather because I appreciate who she is. So if that's the reason, if she is who she is, whatever I do, I want to do because that's who she is. But if you do it, it's contingent on because she is something which she gives to you when you benefit. Now we have to make an evaluation. Is it worth it? Maybe the benefit I receive is a lot less than what she's asking. But it's not based on what she gives, but what she is. There's no everything I do is because of that love. Lahavdil. You do things for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not because of reward. It's never an issue. Is it worth my while? This one time, you're not going to do anything against his will because you love Hashem. It's not because he's going to withhold something from you or because he will give you something. Is it worth it? Not worth it. It's unrelated to that. I do it because I love him. That's Avoshem Tluya. That was Avram Avinu, and he was one of the few people who achieved that level of distinction. As a result of that, there were no holdbacks with Avraham Avinu. Whatever he had to do, he did. He turned the world upside down. As long as he went forward and you couldn't stop him, he just kept going. Seemingly, we find that Avraham Avinu and Noach, the Torah makes a distinction between two of them. It says, regarding Noach, it says, Es Elokim Hisalech Noach. Noach needed that level of assistance. He needed that push. Avraham Avinu was holich mi'atzmo. He was self-motivated. What was the difference? Evidently, the level of Ava that Avram had was much beyond what Noach had. Noach was tzaddik. He was the most righteous. Everything else you say about him, but this particular characteristic, compare him to Avram Avinu just kept going, because Avram Avinu had no holdbacks. Because the only way you could hold him back is you'd have to stop him. But if you couldn't stop him, he just kept going. Noach, he could be stopped. Why could he be stopped? Because he didn't have the level of Ava that Avraham Avinu had. As a result of that, he needed that assistance to assist him to achieve whatever he did achieve. Although ultimately he failed. The Mabul came about because he failed. Okay? But it's an interesting concept. There's the famous Orach Chaim HaKodesh. we speak about the people who donated the materials for the Mishkan. There were two types. There was Asher Yidvenu Libo, right? And then there was the person that was what? Second. We have the Dovo Libo, Nodvo Libo, and the Soul Libo. What's the difference between Nodvo Libo and the Soul Libo? No Dave means I'm giving. I'm a philanthropist. Now, to what degree does a person give? He may give enormous amount, but he only give, even he will give to compromise in his own need, only it's to a point, because he's not going to leave himself bereft. A person who's inspired, and it's only your heart carries you, you give beyond your means, even to a point where even you may actually compromise yourself. Why? Because all that matters is the objective. Not will leave, there's me and there's the objective. I'll give as much as I feel I could give, as long as I'm not compromised to a certain degree. The soul libo is, person who's inspired by his heart, he doesn't think about himself. All he thinks about is the objective. That's the difference. A person who serves Hashem Avo, that's the soul libo. All that matters is that. Avraham Avinu was Oavo. What drove him? Nothing could stop him. There was never a question of value. Is it worth my while? Is it not worth my while? Therefore, he says whatever he did was rooted in that avo. It was driven through that. Noach, on the other hand, was not at that level. And that's why Noach, he needed that assistance to be able to succeed in whatever he was doing. Okay? Halacha Gimel. Ketzad Avo Haru'uyah. What is considered appropriate avo? Hushayevas Hashem Avo Gedolo Yisero. It should be an exceptional level of love. Azo, Ma'od, intense, very intense. To the point where you're bound up in that love, meaning you live it, you experience it. V'nibza shogebo tomid. You're always consumed with it. It's like a person who's obsessed with something that he loves. He can't get it out of his mind. He can't get it out of his emotion. Person is in love with a woman to the point he's consumed with that love. That woman totally consumes him. The love for that woman. Whether he's sitting, whether he's standing, 24/7, he's always thinking about that woman. Because that's the level of love that he has for her. Yes, Hashem. Even beyond that, whatever way, within the human capacity, you can love a woman, and the mind is totally, continuously involved and consumed with that. With Hashem, it's even more. It's in the heart of those who love him. Shogim bo tomid. They're always involved with it. Moshe Tzivonu, b'chol levov chol nafshcha, says in the creation, with you, all your heart. It's not part of your heart, all your heart. B'chol nafshcha, your full life. Even it means giving away your life, you give it away. V'ushe Shlomo Amar, derech Moshe, ki cholas avos oni. He writes in Shir HaShirim, I am lovesick. I'm consumed with it to the point it's like an illness consumes a person. The person is consumed with the love for Hashem. V'chol Shir HaShirim moshul linyazeh. And all Shir HaShirim is the song of songs. It's a love song. How the ultimate level of love that a person can have for a woman, that's the love. That's the allegory. The love we have to have for Hashem, and even beyond that. What's the name of the Maral? The Gemara says in Brachos, Greater is the person who benefits from the handiwork of his hand than the person who fears God. What does that mean? Does it mean say a person is a ditch digger and he earns his own keep through his own effort? Is he greater than Yoreh Shamayim? Person who fears God, who doesn't earn his own keep, who lets you supported by others. So the way I once explained it, which is not the morale, that we're talking about the ditch digger is also a person who fears God. But the other person fears God, but he's supported by others. The one who earns his own keep, he's not bound to anybody else's position or opinion. He's self-sufficient. Why? He says, look, my benefactor is Hashem. So I don't have to be concerned what other people think. My decision of how I have to behave is all based on what God thinks, not what people think. But if you're supported by others, as a human being a beneficiary of other people's kindness, every decision I make, automatically, I have a conflict of interest. Does it meet a satisfying level of the people who support me or I'm involved with? Therefore, the person who earns his own keep, supports himself, is greater than the one who does not, although he's Yoreh Shamayim. The Maral explains it this way. We say that Avas Hashem is greater than Yiras Hashem. If you love God, it's beyond revering God. What is the basis for reverence? Reverence is because I recognize who someone is, truly who he is. I esteem him, revere him, because I feel negated to him, because I cannot even hold up a candle to what he is, whether it's in intellect, whether it's the quality of person. I revere him. I'm amazed. I'm amazed by that person. He negates me. That's reverence. Ava is more than negation. It's one step beyond that, because I recognize who he is, and his value to me is automatically that evokes a love that I have for him. That's love. What's the difference between the person who loves and the person who reveres? Although reverence is an exceptional level, so Maral says, explains it like this: person is destitute, and every night he and his family go to bed hungry. And you say to that person, and he reveres Hashem, because you revere Hashem, you won't question Hashem. I don't question God. Since Hashem is God, and I know who he is, who am I even to ask? But if somebody would say, if I would give you a little bit more to alleviate your pain or your hunger or your worry, would you take it? Person says, yes. Why not? I'm not doing anything wrong. A person who truly loves Hashem will not take it. Why? Because since he understands his relationship with Hashem is, I love him. Why do I love him? Because he provides at that special level, and I recognize who he is, and therefore I go to another level. If he loves me, I love him because he loves me, because I appreciate that. Hashem could provide anything. So why am I in a bereft level? Because he decided I should be. Therefore, if it should be that I need more, he would give me more. Because if he's my beloved would do for me. So why is he withholding it? Because it's not my best interest to have it. So because of the level of love a person has, he understands it's in his best interest not to have. Person reveres mean, who am I to ask? But a person who loves, it's not who am I to ask. If my beloved doesn't provide, that means it's not my interest to have. So the Maral explains to Mar this way: a person has a pittance. That's what God gives him. And he's able to benefit from that, despite being deprived. How do you do that? How could you be nene? How could you benefit from that? The only way you can benefit from that, although it's a pittance, is because you understand it's not in your best interest to have more. But how do you understand that? Because if my beloved doesn't give me more than that, I could benefit from that because I have no questions. The person reveres, he may not have questions. Who am I to ask? But does he have an appreciation why he has less? No. That's the difference. Avraham Avinu, what drove him, no matter what his situation was, never questioned God. Never. not because of reverence only. He was Oavo. Whether his wife was taken when he went to Egypt, never questioned Hashem. Never. Lomatzokka Sora. Sora had a certain shortcoming. When she heard that she was going to have a child, she was skeptical for a moment. And Hashem says, Lomatzokka Sora. Right. Even though she was greater than Avram in prophecy. When Sora told Avram to drive out Hagar and her son, Hashem says, whatever Sora tells you, Shema b'kolo, listen to her prophetic voice. It's not her, that's prophetic voice. But in terms of Avo, Avram was Ovo. Avram had that special level. Therefore, although he's going to have a child at 100 years old, not a moment of skepticism. If Hashem says the rock is going to give birth to a child, the rock gives birth to a child. Never a question. So what's b'mo'eda? But yet he questioned b'mo'eda. Even that level was considered a shortcoming for Avraham Avinu. When God said, I'm giving the land to your children, he says, what happens if they should sin? They won't be worthy. But again, that question was, if the ultimate objective of creation is the Jewish people, and they're not going to be worthy, it's a problem. But that question was emanated from his Avo. Nevertheless, it was inappropriate. Because Hashem never said it's contingent on any precondition. The land is your children. He says, what about if they're going to sin? God says, I didn't say it's contingent. No strings attached. He was worried. That itself was considered a shortcoming. Moshe Rabbeinu was negated. To Hashem, nobody loved Hashem the way Moshe did. Yet, at the burning bush, when he kept going back and forth, because he was concerned he was defending his older brother, he overstepped his bounds. His humility caused him to overstep his bounds, which turned out to be a disrespect. Of course, at that level of disrespect, he forfeited the kuna. Aaron, who was meant to be the Levi, he became the Kohen. And Moshe was the most qualified to be the Kohen. He never achieved the level of Kohen because they asked that inappropriate question. Plus, he lost his wealth, and he went to the Rebbe. And he says to the Rebbe, I'm in the doldrums. I'm depressed. Why? Because at one time when I had means, I was able to achnosis orchim, hospitality, this unusual way. Stoka, anybody who came to my door, I would help them out, marry off their children. Today, I'm literally embarrassed I don't have the means, and I'm in pain that I can't help people. How do I achieve simcha? How can I restore joy in my life where I no longer function in all these different capacities which I used to function? He says, something. I have a chassid. His name is Zusha. He lives in this far-off town. Go visit him. He'll teach you how to be b'simcha, enjoy without anything, literally nothing. Okay? Travels, comes to this town. He starts asking, where does Zusha live? He says, there's a hovel at the end of the community. The windows are stuffed with rags. The door is on one hinge. That's Zusha's house. Okay? So he understands. He's going to learn how to be b'simcha from Zusha who has nothing. Knocks on the door, comes to the door. The person looks malnourished. He's wearing threadbare clothing. He opens the door like he's astonished. Earthen floor. The table is a rickety table. One chair doesn't match the other. A few boards knocked together. And he says, yes, what would you like? He says, the Rebbe sent me. The Rebbe, he mentions the name of the Rebbe. He literally radiates like the sun. With a smile on his face. He's come in, sits down, makes him a glass of tea. I guess that's what he could afford. And he says, why did the Rebbe send me? And he explains to him, because I had everything and I lost it all. And the Rebbe says, you have nothing and you could be b'simcha. The moment he said, you have nothing, he turned, he had a frown on his face. I have nothing. I have everything. What do you mean I have nothing? He says, God forbid, I should question the Rebbe's evaluation of what I have. The Rebbe doesn't realize I have everything. The man had nothing, literally. So he say, something, the man himself, ignorance is bliss. The man is he has his head in the sand. He didn't have his head in the sand. Because if you have that level of Abbas Hashem, when you have nothing, Hashem can provide everything. Why is he providing nothing? Because it's meant to be, I should have nothing, because having nothing is everything. Because that's how I'm able to achieve what I'm meant to achieve. I'll give you an example. Person's in medical school. I'm saying this school, Alan can appreciate this. And some of the other students, the parents are wealthy and they have a credit card and they could go and take a break and go to clubs and eat out, everything else. This other guy, son of a Holocaust survivors, they give him just enough money just to cover his food expense. He can't run around. So they said, we'll take you on the town. He says, I'm not interested. I got to be focused. I got to make something myself. Of course, I have to become a self-earner. You guys, you could take a chance. Your parents are wealthy. I can't take such a chance. Sometimes with Hashem, when it's mean and lean and he denies you, that is the success. Despite that, if you succeed, you've achieved everything. So don't you have Avos Hashem for that? I put you in a diamond mine. And I say, if you work 5 years straight, you're going to mine diamonds, you can support the next 15 generations. But you have to work. You can't be distracted. And the person understands that's the reason why. Doesn't he love the person who gave him permission to work in that mine, knowing what he's mining? A person has Avos Hashem, he understands why I'm in this situation. That despite me being bereft, if I succeed, that's the ultimate level of love. Because Hashem wants me to achieve, to succeed. And that is the ultimate success in that context. It tells us in Avodah Zorah that 3 days before a pagan holiday, you're not supposed to do business with the pagan. Why? Because any level of success he has, immediately he attributes it to his deity. So the Jew goes and purchases something from him. The Jew is the cause that he's praising his deity. So the Mishnah discusses a case. What about a person, a non-Jew is a debtor, and the Jew wants to collect his debt within 3 days of the pagan holiday? Is he permitted? So that means that the Gentile has to get the money. You're turning the screws on him. So one opinion is you're allowed to. Why not? Because you're putting him through the ringer to get that money. Other opinion says no. It may be difficult initially, but once he pays that debt, he's relieved. So therefore, that feeling of relief, he's going to praise his deity. So when he's trying to get the money together, he's not yet praising. But if he's going to collect that debt before the holiday's over, that relief, who does he attribute that relief to? To his deity. So the Jews, the cause, he's not permitted. Same idea. If you understand the pain and everything else, and you succeed despite that, and you make the right choice, that's the ultimate. So if you are able to internalize that reality, you do it with joy. Understanding the value of every moment. That's the understanding. So let's understand what Avos Hashem is. We banter this Avos Hashem around. There's no question we do things out of Avo. We do things out of Avo. But are you what? Ohev. Avos, I do it out of love. But if you want to classify the person, are you a Ohev Hashem? Do you love God? Love God means that whatever I do is like the Rambam says, because I understand who you are, I love you. A person could do something even not for that reason, but it's still out of love. For instance, Hashem gives you a phenomenal family, and you have no problems in your life. You love him, and therefore, when you put on your tefillin, you put it on with love. You say the Shema with love. You are doing it with love. But what would be if God turns the screws? Automatically, it minimizes that feeling. But when you do it out of love, you're doing it out of love. Although you're not an Ohev Hashem. Ohev Hashem, the person himself recognizes who he is, who God is. So regardless of what the circumstance is, it's not because what he does for me. It's because I love him. It's not contingent on anything. That's the difference. We're not saying a person who is not an Ohev can't do things out of love. You could do things out of love. Yeah, for the moment, I'm doing it out of love because I feel a certain way positive towards you. But if things aren't so simple, it's much more difficult. It's not that easy because we're not at that level. Years ago, Real Tauber, famous speaker, he put out, used to go on. Originally, he himself survived the Holocaust. He was a child in hiding in Hungary. His parents and the whole family survived. And he was a chassid, and he invested a tremendous amount of money in outreach in Kiruv. The property for Sameach up in Rockland County, he gave the property. He would travel throughout the United States, speaking about basic belief in Hashem, disseminating what people, Jews who don't know should know, or even Jews who know, they don't know well enough, that he would encourage it. And he told them a story that in the Warsaw Ghetto, the Nazis, Yemach Shemam, the many Jews who hid in buildings, and the Nazis couldn't flush them out. What did they do? They burnt the buildings down. They torched the buildings. And people had no choice. They were hiding even in the walls or basements. They came out. And as they came out, they killed them. And if they didn't come out, they were burnt to death. So there was one person who left a script, who died in Warsaw Ghetto. He writes, Hashem, I love you. I want to do your will. But the pain is reaching at a level that, God forbid, you're causing me not to do the right thing. You're causing me to have doubts about who you are. Please don't cause me to have doubts, because the pain is becoming so overwhelming. I don't want the question should be a question. The person perished in the Warsaw Ghetto. But what is this person? He's holding on literally by the tips of his fingers, by threads. And he feels he's going down, not down in dying, in his belief. It's literally putting a slight question on his belief. Please don't take it away from me, because I've lived my whole life for that, and that's what it's all about. What does it say about that person? That's the ultimate Kiddush Hashem. As much as God turned the screws on him, he's afraid. What's his worry? Not that he's going to die. That the pain is too difficult, therefore it may actually compromise his belief in God. Well, there was a small town in Lithuania called Kelm. And Kelm was the famous yeshiva of this student, Simcha Zissel Ziv, who's known as the Alta of Kelm. All the greatest Bali Musa people, personalities came from that yeshiva. And this was the third generation. It was somebody married to his granddaughter. His name was Rav Moshevitz, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva in Kelm. And the Nazis come to Kelm. There wasn't one survivor. And they come to the yeshiva, and they said, they rounded up all the men, women, and children, a small community, and said, in 20 minutes, we're going to kill every person in this community. So Rav Moshevitz says to the Nazi who was going to give the order, says, give me 15 minutes. I'd like to speak to the people before you kill us. And he gave a talk similar to Rabbi Chana Wasserman, that the dying al Kiddush Hashem, what it means, sanctify God's name, and they're being murdered because they're Jews, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, they're going to merit the ultimate. And afterwards, after he finishes giving this lecture, they get into a circle and they start dancing with a level of joy. Fortune is our portion, our lot. There's nothing, and they're with ecstasy, with joy. The commandant is watching this. He thinks these people lost their minds. You hear this? They're about to be murdered literally in a minute. And they're dancing with joy because they're going to their death. Doesn't make sense. They've gone mad, these people. Doesn't make a difference. Then he gave the order. Wasn't one survivor of the Kelm community. What does that say? This is the ultimate. You know that your life will be snuffed out in a second in the most cruel, murderous way. And you say, this is the ultimate privilege. But that's what happened. In the merit of these people, these martyrs, despite all the influences of the world, were able to remain observant Jews. They generated such a level of rachmin in God's eyes, and Hashem says, Mi kamcha Yisrael, goy echad ba'aretz. Who's like the Jewish people? There's only one such nation in the world. The terrorists, Yemach Shemam, the Arabs, they'll blow themselves up to murder other people because they believe they're going there. Everything is the context of what? of cruelty, demonic behavior. That's what they are. They're monsters. For the sake of what? Because they're going to get their share. They'll destroy the world. Here, although you're going to destroy us, it's irrelevant. Because who are we? It's a privilege to give our lives for Hashem. It has nothing to do with killing other people. No.